So now, yeah, the panel is basically going to start now with the following participants. So we have, of course, Martin Schneider from the VDZ. And then our new panelists, kind of in addition to that, we have Dr. Gerhard Weiner, head of the naBe-Platform. This is a service center for the Austrian Sustainable Public Procurement Action Plan. Then we have our also not the first time guest, Yasen Markov, who also participated in the EU guidance of the Ministry of Transport and Communication of Bulgaria, head of the Department for Risk Management, Prevention and Administration of Irregularities. Yeah. And we have Enrico Fibig and Tomasz Wojtczak of Amiblu. So respectively, Enrico Fibig of Amiblu Austria, pipe production company, and Amiblu Poland, interesting because they also participated in the EU guidance with their feedback. So then this is going to be very interesting. We have also Przemysław Ostrowski from the Center of EU Transport Projects in Poland, and Dr. Abi Semple, Public Procurement Analysis in the UK, Greenville Procurement Partners in Ireland. And we have as well César Bartolomé Muñoz of the Spanish Institute of Cement and its application. He's representing EUPAVE. He's presenting EUPAVE, so more EUPAVE today. EUPAVE was also participating with the feedback in the EU guidance, and EUPAVE is the European Concrete Paving Association. Yeah, so a little bit related to cement, I would say. So, and last but not least, also a quite frequent and often guest here at We Think is Mario Galic of the University of Osijek in Croatia, associate professor, and he brings a little bit more the BIM, building information modeling and digitalization aspect in construction to the discussion. Yeah, so I just need to laugh because Tudor is highlighting in the background what I need to say. So thank you very much, Tudor, for this. And yeah, so let me just switch my screen. I hope everything works with the microphones, but we will see that. Yeah, wonderful. Then we just start. So as I said, we will do one round of one question for each of the panelists, kind of, and then afterwards we will lead over into the more open discussion where then everybody can or should participate. Yeah. So we will start with Dr. Martin Schneider. Yeah. And I would like to know a little bit, of course, your thoughts on the EU guidance.
Yeah. I've scanned it only, recently, and I think, as I said before, I'm not in the procurement business, yeah. So I'm not sure whether all the tools or the suggestions given there are really in real life, they can be implemented. I think there are people here in the conference who can judge this better, But what I see here is that the sustainability aspect here is really nicely addressed. I've seen this CO2 data for the Netherlands. There's one case study there that was very, very enlightening, I have to say. So I think it's a powerful in the sense that also encouraged us to look at the examples there and the possibilities, how we can address in public procurement sustainability aspects. So I think I read it with very good interest. The question, of course, at the end is of course, how do you quantify, some of the topics, in procurement? And I think that would be something for the panel. What is the information that can be read from an EPD, for example, or do you need a certification scheme, levels and classes in order to address this in procurement? That would also be helpful for us to know, that we can link together here and to streamline the whole exercise. you know, we can come up with CO2 footprints, but the question is that really helpful? And that was not quite clear for me from that guidance document. That maybe that the flight height of the guidance document is a little bit higher than what is needed for real practical life. So that was my impression when I read it.
Mm-hmm. Super, thank you very much, Dr. Schneider. And yeah, we would continue straight with Yasen Markov of the Ministry of Transport and Communication in Bulgaria. And a little bit a similar question. So your thoughts on the EU guidance, also considering that you were somewhat active as a contributor in the development of the paper, and how you see the guidance fit with the current situation in Bulgaria regarding sustainable procurement practices. So is it good? Is something still needed? That would be interesting to hear from you. Yasen.
Thank you very much, Ingo. Indeed, it was quite interesting process to be involved in some of the discussions which took place during the drafting of the document, and I take for this opportunity, of course. So the final product, from my point of view, has a lot of interesting features also for the practice and also for Bulgaria. What I can share with the audience, that there are forthcoming initiatives in Bulgaria regarding the specifically the green procurement, and there is a change of the public procurement law in making currently. It is subject to a public consultation, and for construction contracts above certain value, which is the EU tenders value, actually above 5 million euro, there will be a mandatory requirements which will it will be required to specify the technical specification of the procurement or as indicators in the award criteria. This green environmental requirements. In that regard, I find that this document can serve like kind of a source for drafting, because in the law it is envisaged to have ordinance which will supplement and will show how exactly to include these environmental requirements into the tenders. So I think this can be a reference document. And further, there are what I find interesting is the numerous examples which were included in the document. Double calc, of course, it is interesting too. We followed this like 5-6 years ago. It was purely Netherlandish experience, and now it is more and more mentioned. So probably something like this can be thought about at EU level. So it's one of the things. And another examples are related to Austrian railways, for example, which is relevant for us because we are dealing with railway projects. So I can speak a lot about the relevance, but my general impression is that this is a working document, and it can be useful in practice. So this is from my point of view.
Yep, super, Yasen. Thank you very much for this. And now I just need to check, because Valentina, she already left. You already left, I think. So Yasen, okay. And then we would continue with Gerhard Weiner, head of the naBe-Platform in Austria. And so the question for you is a little bit kind of also related to the EU guidance. So the EU guidance provides a checklist to support the public authorities' self-assessment of the tendering procedure, and kind of what is your general feeling on the EU guidance, and maybe this checklist, does it fit the Austrian tendering process?
Good morning from my side. Thank you for the invitation. Gerhard Weiner is speaking. I'm the head of the so-called naBe-Platform. This is the service center of the Sustainable Public Procurement naBe Action Plan. And maybe some words to the naBe Action Plan. Maybe not everybody here in this round is informed about our ambitions here in Austria. We have since 2010 this naBe action plan, who is defined in 16 procurement groups. Of course, there are criteria for constructions and for civil engineering inside it, but we have also a broad a group row around ICT, textiles, food, and so on. And my job is to handle with all these procurement groups. So I have to confess, I'm not a construction expert, so I can give you only an overview about the situation here in Austria. And what is also very important, we give us 2021 a new criteria sets also for the construction sites. And I compared our criteria with the guidance. And first I considered we have the same access for the structure, because in the guidance and also in our criteria group for public procurement in construction, we use the phases of a tender, and this phase starts very early, long before you define your tender. You start already with a development of the project, and there are questions around the location of the building, and that you have good access, for example, for public transport. And we have then the draft phase, the pre-draft phase before, and the tender phase, the construction phase, and of course the use phase. And maybe I want to talk a little bit about the future. And now I talk about our present criteria, but we are not satisfied with the current situation of our criteria. And so we already installed a new working group on the federal level. What is also really important, I have to say, is on the federal level, the naBe action plan is mandatory. So this gives us a huge push to bring these criteria into action. And on the other side, we are also very engaged to bring these criteria also on the federal state level. Maybe you know the structure in Austria. We have 9 Bundesländer, the 9 federal states here in Austria, and also they have huge capabilities on the construction side. And of course, we have to look at the municipality level, to the cities. The cities are also really important, and we try to harmonize our criteria with the federal states and the municipalities, and we have here special formats to work closer with these unities. But on some last thoughts about the future, we think what is also really important, for example, at the development level, is the examination of the feasibility of the existing building, and also the use and utilization of local resources. And really last word is about the refurbishment. One term I want to bring into discussion, it's the social urban mining. This is also a huge topic we want to address for our next criteria group. And one last word to the guidance. I think the checklist, checklist is really helpful and can hold the hand, if I would like to say it so, for the public contractor, for the public authorities to have a good overview about the many items, about the many criteria they have to check, they have to consider. Maybe not all are for them suitable, but it's a good first step into to get an overview about the criteria. And one thought about the funding. I'm not sure if the guidance has this topic in the documents, and this, of course, it's also a topic of the member states. But I see this really helpful to give guidance about funding. But I see this is an action. This is a need for service centers like we here are in Austria have the naBe-Platform, and the funding is a leverage to bring the criteria in action. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gerhard, for these comments. I always need to check if I'm muted or unmuted. So yeah, thank you very much. Next, we would go with Enrico Fibig and Tomasz Wojtczak from Amiblu. And the question to you, gentlemen, would be a little bit on your experience in the primarily, I would say, Polish market on applying the EU guidance, how it is handled, maybe what you see as improvement possibilities.
So, hello, my name is Tomasz Wojtczak. I'm in charge of the Amiblu part in Poland, so managing director of Amiblu Poland. And we have already started some discussions with some federation of Polish entrepreneurs to make from the guidance a law. To be honest, guidance is only guidance. And we see very often in the daily business that it's not enough. It's not enough because in the end, 95% of the projects we are dealing with are finished always by the price. So the only one criteria is the price. Even if today in the Polish law is written that there are two kind of criteria. One is the simply costs. The second one could be applied with more details, and but there are no structure for this. Okay, so it's clear that today the guidance, even coming from EU, it's not enough. EU is spending money on most of the projects we are dealing with, but the guidance will not allow the companies that are doing sustainable development to be paid or to be chosen. It's not to pay the cost we have as a companies to be sustainable, because this is a cost. There are costs behind, and we are a little bit, let's say, afraid that all this what we are doing, certainly by Amiblu, to improve our sustainability, to think about green development, or in our case is blue one because it's water. It's not good enough. It's not paid and is not valuated. And because of this, we try to push the Polish law in this direction. So instead to have only the guidance that are quite complicated. To be honest, if you see the panels of investors we have, you have very big municipalities. They don't have any problem to understand the guidance, to put the criteria or whatever you wish, if they wish to do it. Yeah? The most important, today they could use it, or it's only a guidance. Yeah? So, but then we have plenty of small cities. They don't have even the guys, the personnel taking care about the tendering process and so on. So to understand all the guidance, it's for them most of the time too complex, too European. Yeah, so we would like to have something a little bit more easy to apply, and this should be allowed. So for the moment, our main goal is to find out together with this another players, because in this panel of the group we have built together with the Polish Federation of Entrepreneurs. We have also the investors. We have this big construction companies. We have the designers. We have the product suppliers, and we have also the banks. So this what the colleague before me was telling. The finance. This is one of the main points that we can use as a leverage to get this, let's say, guidance perhaps be live. Yeah, and this is why again we would like go from the world guidance to law, because only this will give some push to the sustainable development. Many companies doing this today. We are not only alone, and we still be in competition with other ones, but we would like to be in competitions with guys that doing the same what we are doing, and not be always pushed out only because of this, that they are cheaper materials, not long wasting materials, and so on and so on. So our aim is to go from the word guidance to law, and this we are working on this.
Okay, wonderful. From guidance to law, yeah, very good.
Yeah, it's a long way. It's certainly not so easy, but we was thinking already with the bank, the main investor bank in Poland, to let's say make some criteria that they will as a bank they will provide cheaper credit or whatever. For this kind of let's say tendering process that are included all the sustainability stuff. The second one, what we was thinking, is also to make some let's say certificate, that companies certificate with this external label that we will be audited on whatever it is, could be also have some points in this score list that will be easier for the investors to choose one that is, let's say, more sustainable as the other ones. So this is our aim, and this is our actions today in Poland. Thanks.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much, Tomasz. And we continue also with the perspective from Poland. So Przemysław Ostrowski from the Center of EU Transport Projects, and question for you, also a little bit in the same direction as to Tomasz from Amiblu, was can you share your perspective a little bit on the current state of affairs in Poland, but maybe also in the other countries in the EU, on transport projects and tendering for these, and environmental and green criteria being used in these? And do you see, well, how do you see kind of the state of affairs in Poland, and it has the guidance maybe some positive effect there? Yeah.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. As a center for the European Union Transport Project, generally we are an institution responsible for management and control process. Well, we have a huge infrastructural, for instance, infrastructure and environment, Phoenix, Connecting Europe, operational program Eastern Poland. So infrastructural programs with the great support of the European Union. Well, I have some thoughts about this guidance. Maybe as a result, I will repeat some remarks that Mr. Wojtczak, but I think it's quite natural because we have the same situation in Poland. As Mr. Wojtczak just already had mentioned, these so-called green criteria are not used by Polish contracting authority. Just to confirm this, I will show you some data, because according to the final report of research in the field of sustainable public procurement in Poland in 2020, this report shows that 10,544 contracts were awarded this year, at this specific year, that take into account environmental or innovation aspects with a value over 12 billion Polish zloty. But participation of green innovative contracts awarded was only 1%, while their value accounted for approximately 7% of the total value of public contracts awarded. And one of the reasons, as authors of this report mentioned, was that procurement it's so widely used in Poland because there's the lack of mandatory nature of legal solutions providing for the possibility the use of aspects. Because in our law, if we look at the article 242 of our Polish procurement law, the most advantageous tender may be selected on the basis quality criteria and price or cost. So the word key is maybe, because the next paragraph in this article, according to the next paragraph, quality criteria may be, sorry, in particular relating to environmental aspects, including energy efficiency of the matter of the contract. So word key, once again, word maybe. I especially try to compare our legislation with some other terms. Let's say, for instance, with the system, their law was not so long ago completely changed, and now we have 108 of the this is called Codice dei Contratti Pubblici, so code of contracts, and in this article we can find that the contract authorities contribute to the achievement of the environmental objectives set out in the action plan through the inclusion in the project and tender documentation of at least technical specifications, contractual clauses, the minimum environmental criteria. And in the system we have so-called criteria ambientali minimi. So it means that contracting authorities, they don't suffer from the lack of some practical solutions, yes? There are there are specific criteria regarding type of sector that must be used. Although regarding construction, they are still under development, if I remember well. So maybe that's a problem, because it takes a lot of years to elaborate this kind of criteria. Another legal system, we have the Spanish system, Ley de los Contratos, in which we can find, to be more specific, Article 145, that the application of more than one award criteria will proceed in any case in the following contracts. And you have the H point contract that may have a significant impact on the environment. So in this case, environmental condition values such as, for instance, lower environmental impact, saving and efficient use of water and energy, and environmental life cycle cost. So as you can see, we can summarize that we have two approaches, yes, or even some mixture of these two approaches. So, or we can focus on the, let's say, educational approach. We should promote this green criteria. Also, after the conference, I'm going to encourage my colleague to publish on the website this guidance. Also, we can mention in our bulletin, which is read by our jurors. Also, I would like to emphasize that lately the situation has changed a little bit, because our Polish Public Procurement Office published a very useful document, good practice in the of environmental award criteria. And in this document, we can find some practical solutions like award criteria in the ecological technical parameters of vehicles, or, for instance, criteria related to the supply or use in the division of a service of products produced in accordance with the requirements of organic production. Also, our beneficiaries, also the huge one responsible for road infrastructure, used some other interesting criteria, like, for instance, reclaimed asphalt use to new roads construction, because this asphalt can be reused for building new roads, replacing the wave of the new asphalt. So I think we have two approaches, but I must agree with Mr. Wojtczak that we should translate this into legal language, yes. And the second type of approach, as additional type of approach, We should also encourage our contracting authorities that other criteria might be used, and this ultimately will have their advantages, because we should always take into consideration only the first phase, let's say, of the project, of the construction, the whole life cycle cost, which is also in this document. So I think that's all about my all remarks. I'm interested. Are you agree to? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Przemysław. Yeah, we would continue with the César Bartolomé Muñoz of EUPAVE, or representing EUPAVE. And my question to you would be kind of what are your thoughts on the guidance, content and structure? And for EUPAVE, do you think that the guidance does help you in your activity and your relations with authorities? Or should there maybe be something improved in the future? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yes, I mean, I'm for us it is a great step forward, I guess. Okay, because we will count on a supranational document that we can use at national level. Don't forget that any public procurement is mainly done at national level. But having just this a document from the Commission, just supporting the idea that we must include different parameters within tendering processes, I think that it is a good tool just to promote other factors apart from construction cost. I agree that, of course, it can be improved and that we have to work on that improvements, but I think that it is a tool that we can use and that is useful in that sense. And why? But mainly because from the pavement or concrete pavement sector, we have always defended the long term, and it's true that in current procurement processes, a long term is not considered. Only initial cost is considered, and in that case, concrete pavements never can compete in a level playing field. And in that sense, I mean, the guide has at least the concept of fair competition within its principles, linking this fair competition to economic sustainability. So I think that in that sense, that concept at least, and including that concept within the guide, I think that it is a good step forward just for defending the long term, the durability, and other factors that are not included in initial costs. Of course, it also includes the life cycle cost analysis as an important tool just to change the procurement processes. And for us, it is also important when you are comparing different solutions, you must take into account the whole life cycle when comparing the economic, when doing that economic comparison, and that is also included in the guidance. And I think that is also important. Of course, other factors such as cost indicators, environmental cost indicators, that just including those the environmental impacts within the economic offer, I think that is also important. So I think that in that sense, at least it gives a framework that wasn't considered before, and I think that it is a good way just to go ahead. Also, I think that is another important thing that is in the guidance is that it covers also the project phase. When talking about green public procurement, we usually focus on construction. When you when that construction company goes to the tendering processes and it offers the solution, not the solution, it offers its services just to construct, in this case, I mean, any kind of pavement. But the problem we have is that the decision is made not at the construction level, but at the project phase. When you decide what kind of solution you want to use, you go to the project phase, and the decision is made at that stage. And in that sense, I think that the inclusion of the project phase within the guide, I think it is also another point that we have to appreciate, because when the construction procurement process, or when we get to the construction procurement, I think it is late because the decision has already been made before, and the construction companies, it can improve the solution, but it can change it. So I think that it is important just to make the good decisions at the beginning. And I think the most important point within the guide is the monitoring of the solution and the monitoring of the process. We always say that I mean, theoretically we can do or we can't do anything, but you have to do it afterwards. I mean, in reality, and you can offer whatever you want theoretically, but if no one controls what you are doing in reality, I think that we wouldn't achieve anything. And in that sense, monitoring and let's have some penalties or some incentives just for compliance, I think that's a great, from my point of view, is one of the greatest points within the guide. I think that we must include that in the procurement processes. I mean, that we have to monitor the performance of in this case of pavements. We cannot just say, okay, we have built it, we just submit it and that's it, we forget about it. And I said that we were doing something that was going to last forever, and after 5 or 6 years, it is ruined. So I think that's that monitoring after procurement, after construction, I think that's important just to guarantee the compliance of the product within the procurement that we did. And I think that's also important. It is included in the guidance. As I said at the beginning, I think it is another step forward. Not, of course, not the last one, but it is something that we have just to make or to specifically direct the local and national authorities to these, let's say, sustainable procurement processes that they must consider in their regulation, in their laws, and so on. So yes, I think that from EUPAVE we are satisfied, but as always, not enough. We have to go. We have to continue.
Thank you, César. And we would continue with Dr. Abby Semple, Public Procurement Analysis, Greenville Procurement Partners. And the question for you is, what extent do you anticipate the guidance to have a substantial impact in promoting sustainable practices in the absence of a binding regulatory framework?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ingo, and thank you to all the previous speakers for your interesting reflections on this. So I'm Abby Semple, and I'm a consultant working with public bodies on sustainable procurement, covering a range of different sectors, including construction works. For example, at the moment, I'm working in Ireland with the Environmental Protection Agency to update and revise Ireland's guidance on green procurement, including in relation to buildings. And I was involved in the production of the guidance, although rather small role, really. I was involved in what Valentina referred to as the complicated and boring part, the legal review of the examples which were provided. So interesting to have a look at these and then to see, of course, the final document which has been published. And I think we can probably say that reactions will be divided between those who say, hooray, another piece of guidance that we can use and draw upon. And I think there are some very, very good things in it. But perhaps also some of us will feel, oh no, not another guidance document that we need to review and try and take on board in this area, which is already quite complicated. And I think we can see that there are quite a range of tools, criteria, frameworks, guides, standards, certifications that exist and which are being used in different countries. And in some ways that's a good thing. You know, we're all trying more or less to get to the same place in terms of decarbonization of the built environment. And it's natural that there will be different approaches to doing that. And some would say, you know, this is how you get innovation. You throw everything at the wall and you see what sticks. So to some extent, we're in that process, and it's interesting and it's exciting. But from my point of view, working with individual public authorities on projects, and I think I've heard this echoed by some of the other speakers, there is a sense of perhaps being overloaded, not necessarily having the time or the capacity to reflect on these different approaches, to choose the one that makes the most sense for an individual project. And then in construction in particular, the overriding focus on cost, and also often the sort of time poor nature of these projects, that many projects, I'm thinking here particularly about Ireland, where there's a very acute need for housing, for social housing. There's a lot of pressure on public bodies to deliver this social housing. And there really isn't so much time to engage in all the pre-procurement planning and engagement with the market that we might like, and which we might acknowledge as best practice. So the question then that was asked of me is, is the guidance going to have an impact, or do we need to be thinking more about mandatory approaches? And this is actually a question I've reflected on quite a lot, including as a contributor to a book, which will hopefully be published later this year, looking at this question, should we have sustainable public procurement as a mandatory requirement at EU level? And the book analyzes different sectors. So the chapter I wrote looks at transport, and then other people have looked at buildings and energy and the food sector and so on. So it is a part of a broader debate. And I think one argument is, until it's mandatory, it's not going to happen. And we see that, our colleagues from Poland saying, for example, almost every works contract there is going to be awarded based on lowest cost or lowest price. And that's true in other member states as well. So unless we either have a law at national level, perhaps, or within European law, perhaps stronger conditionality attached to European funding programs, which has obviously been discussed as well. But, are we really ensuring that every euro spent on EU funded projects has some kind of conditionality around the sustainability of the outcomes? So I think that's certainly an argument that can be made, that until this is mandatory, we may see good practice, and we've seen, some really interesting examples of good practice linked to circular construction and other areas, or the possibility of delivering low carbon cement or paving. But it's not going to become the norm. It's not going to become business as usual until we have some kind of mandatory framework, either at EU level or national level, or indeed both. So that's a view that I find myself sympathizing with. But then the next question is, okay, well, what is it that could conceivably be made mandatory? And this is obviously where you get the question of, well, what has the most impact? What is practical to be applied in different types of projects? I'm a bit of a skeptic about the idea that you can have a one-size-fits-all approach that's going to cover the range of different projects and approaches that we see in place across the EU 27. I think part of the answer, and something that I'm surprised we haven't discussed it more up until now, is that we do have voluntary EU GPP criteria for the built environment, so for buildings. Those criteria are currently under revision, and they do exactly what one of the colleagues from Poland was mentioning, which is that they translate into legal language, so into language that can be inserted into tender documents and into contracts, some quite specific requirements that address the entire life cycle of buildings. So I don't know how many of you have been following that process or involved in it. I put the link up in the chat to the current draft of the criteria, and my understanding is that those are expected to be adopted within the next 6 months or so, as part of the set of EU GPP criteria that we have. Now, they're never going to be perfect. They do go out of date over time, but they do go quite a lot of the way towards translating into concrete tender requirements you know, the guidance, the best practice, the frameworks, and everything else that we have. So I think those are definitely part of the answer. They are not mandatory at EU level, but we have seen certain member states, and I know Gerhard has talked about the approach in Austria. You know, you do have certain member states where the GPP criteria are mandatory. Italy, for example, has made GPP criteria mandatory for certain types of contract. So to me, that is the most natural direction of travel for this, given the work that has been done to date. And what I think we really need to do as part of that is get a bit more serious about impact assessment and actually comparing the results that we get where we apply GPP criteria to say, well, what is the tangible impact in terms of carbon? Or other metrics. You know, again, we're not just thinking about carbon, we're thinking, of course, about biodiversity, we're thinking about water, we're thinking about land use, deforestation, etc. So it's not a single metric that we're going to apply, but it will be a range of metrics that are linked to clear criteria. And the advantage of that, if we do start to go to a more harmonized approach, is that obviously it makes it easier for the industry to adapt. Okay, if instead of having 500 approaches, each of which might have some merits, we have not one approach, but a smaller number of approaches that we're seeing being used more consistently across Europe, I think we give ourselves an advantage in terms of allowing industry to adapt and to respond to those criteria. So that would be my view, and happy to discuss and take questions.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you very much. And now we would go to Dr. Mario Galic of the University of Osijek in Croatia, and looking a little bit at the BIM or technology perspective. So how would you interpret the European Commission's mention of building information modeling in the guidance? And do you see kind of the potential for increased efficiency in the public procurement process with these tools, and maybe what can be done kind of to improve their usage?
Yeah, thanks, Ingo.
Thanks,
Tudor. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah, perfect. We hear you super.
Because we have some renovations done here at the faculty, so it might seem that I'm on the construction site, but I'm not. I'm at the office at the faculty.
It's very calm, like.
For now, yeah. It was really interesting once more, the discussion so far. So I will try to keep up. Okay, about the question, it's not easy again to answer it in 4 to 5 minutes and be should I put it in detail? Yeah, I will try to be concise then. About the guidance and BIM and the question, can it help to increase transparency and efficiency in construction projects procurement? I would say it can, but will it? I'm not sure. I'm really skeptical about this, because it's a matter of context. BIM, last time we discussed about the problems that BIM brought regarding the interoperability and, let's say, the technical part of implementing BIM. So now today I will talk about another problem that we will have with BIM in construction projects. So in terms of any attempt in helping the industry and authorities in utilizing BIM and benefit from all the things that BIM brings, I welcome any kind of guidance. But on the other hand, guidance, I would say, it reminds me of a series of books saying 5 secrets of happy life, or 7 ways to make your life successful, and so on. So in that case, I would say only 10 times is BIM mentioned in those guidance you asked. So it's a matter of context, as I said. Really, I'm not sure. The first problem, I would say that BIM cannot solve by itself the problems that we had or still have in construction projects regarding the efficiency and transparency. By itself, it cannot. So I will just refer for the previous speaker saying that mandatory might happen in near future. And for that sake, I'm up to it, because I do not see BIM happening or that we will use and benefit from BIM as we might without making it mandatory for construction projects in European Union. But I will refer to another problem that BIM brings today. It's a matter of cybersecurity. So it will help, it might help, as I said, bringing the transparency, but it will bring another problem that I have a notion that we are still behind of the problem, which is cybersecurity. So if I have just a minute or two, saying that construction sector is targeted as one of the most vulnerable in terms of cybersecurity. And in that case, today, I would say that BIM will, if it becomes mandatory, it will need much preparation that can only be done with, not with guidance, with clear directives and technology, I would say, methodology. How should it be implemented in such manner that that it, firstly, it would be secure, and the other thing that it will bring the benefits that we are looking for from BIM. So so if I only can conclude for this question that will BIM help? Yes, if we fulfill all of the requirements beforehand, it was mandatory implemented, or even if we on the national levels try to incorporate BIM. So I hope I answered the question. As I said, I try to be concise. I'm open for discussion and questions.
Yeah, super. Thank you very much for this first round of questions. So